We're live. Okay, I want to talk about the psychology of eating raw meat, raw ancestral foods, meat, eggs, marrow, seafood, roe slash caviar. Some cultures eat insects, and I have eaten my share of insects to try them. I'm not crazy about the idea of eating bugs, but the reason I've tried them is manifold. One is because trying new things is just generally how you learn. Um, I wanted to be able to speak with experience in consumption of doing so. Um, I've eaten grubs, mealworms, moths, flies, uh, mosquitoes. Trying to think of any other. A lot of insects have some really potent chemistry in them, so they're not. I did eat a green caterpillar one time while I was grazing my cows. Probably one of the most bitter things I've ever eaten in my life, and I instantly regretted it. Didn't die from it, didn't get sick. Probably had some medicinal benefit, but boy, was that ever strong. Um, anyway, um, so a little background on me. My parents raised me on excessive amounts of fast foods, industrial foods, candy, garbage, filth. It was absolutely normal for me to eat processed foods for all meals daily and to drink a 12 pack of Coke or Dr. Pepper or Pepsi or anything I could get my hands on uh, every 2 days or so. Sometimes less, but I was absolutely addicted to these things. I did not want real food by and large, other than I always loved meat. I always loved fried foods, but I didn't want salads, vegetables. Yeah, I was very picky younger, and then later I became less picky after I learned to cook in a high school cooking class, but still was living almost entirely on garbage. I mean, in our public schools here, you can get cookies for lunch with your lunch money that your parents have paid into your account. Do you know how wrong that is to allow an irresponsible child who doesn't know any better and is going completely on hedonism, whatever I want now, whatever is gratification, to allow them to eat cookies for lunch? And that the school fresh baked, so they're hot and melty and gooey and yummy. And if it wasn't that, it was disgusting processed chicken nuggets and just garbage, okay? America, especially, but all of modern civilization, including places like India, um, China, Africa, everyone's on the industrial processed food bandwagon these days. There are very few populations that live almost entirely on whole foods now. So that's how I lived, and I ruined my health from zero till college. In college, it became too much, and I was like everybody else, germ theory to the max. I was sterilizing my stuff. I wouldn't eat, I was afraid of germs, just like everybody else. I didn't I didn't come here on my own. I didn't come to loving germs and to being one of their biggest proponents on the planet by guidance or by any of society. I was right there with you. I was as brainwashed as all of you are, who are not living the lifestyle that I am, which there's only about 20,000 people out of a population of 7 billion that I'm aware of. That's a pretty small proportion of planet who's like me. So statistically speaking, you probably eat a standard Western diet or a standard modern diet. Processed foods, starch heavy, lots of alcohol, more alcohol than any population's ever had um, in the history of humanity, or at least the last 10,000 years. I was right there with you. So, and I didn't go straight to being okay with germs. So I ruined my health. I was getting chronic skin infections, flus, colds in the clinic constantly. Um, my skin infections would be the size of a silver dollar and last for weeks. Okay, could you imagine having pus leaking out of your face? Disgusting for weeks at a time. Well, that's what living almost entirely on modern industrial foods will do for you. It will wreck your body so bad that it's literally falling to pieces and oozing out toxic waste constantly. And it's foul. I'm not proud that I have to say this to share my story. It disgusts me and I wish I could just never think of it again. Because those were the darkest and most painful years of my life. Um, I got fed up with it. I tried everything in Western medic. Creams, ointments. They cut open my body and expected me to like stuff sutures down inside of my these infections, which is the most painful. Imagine stuffing gauze into an open wound every day. Okay? That's disgusting and so painful. I mean, think of the most awful pain you've ever had in your life, and that's about what we're talking about. I didn't want to socialize because of that. I felt self conscious. It hurt to even smile because of these skin infections. My tissue was weak, and then there was a lot of emotional and cognitive baggage that goes along with that. When your system is depressed, it's much easier for you emotionally to be depressed and aggressive and uh, irritable, and along with that, cognitive issues, cloudiness. I would never have been as articulate as I am now when I had candida, when I had a yeast, a fungus consuming my entire body and probably like a web in my brain. That's how significant the sugar and carbohydrate, which is what feeds these yeasts, as well as unsaturated fats, that's how prominent it was in my system. My system was literally falling to pieces and rotting while I was alive. If you were to take a photo of me and then magically remove my body from it but leave the candida behind, you would see like a web, a human-shaped web that was exactly my shape, except all it is just fungus, yeast growing on the sodas and the starches, the carbs, the garbage I was eating. So after I gave Western medicine chance to zap me and cut me open and drug me with antibiotics, and none of it was helping. And my doctors, every time I would ask them, could it have anything to do with diet? They would flat out shut it down. Absolutely not. No, it's very unlikely. No, there's no evidence of that. All you have to do is look around, but looking around is not scientific, is it? Occam's razor isn't scientific, it's a fallacy, right? Nothing exists unless it's been proven in a double-blind experiment funded by some corporation that wants to prove that their bleach is effective, even though bleach is only 99.9% effective, which is the same as vinegar, which is almost completely non-toxic. So, whatever. Um, so after I gave him this chances to do that, I started doing research. I said, "F you, Western medicine. I'm gonna go figure shit out on my own." I started doing research into how people had cured conditions similar to mine. That led me to starting with multivitamins, which helped a little, but not much. Then I started adding salads and raw veggies to my diet, um, and instant improvement, instant more energy. My infections weren't as fierce and didn't last as long. I was still eating a lot of sugar, so I'd still have flare ups, but I was noticing that I wasn't as inflamed. I wasn't as red and puffy. These things weren't lasting as long. They weren't as severe, um, and they would heal up more completely. I mean, I've got scars all over. You can see them very well in this light. Every single one of those was an infection that I was probably picking at and stuff. Now I don't have any of that. Look at this. Look at this. Nothing. My skin's not perfect because I still drink coffee and stuff. I'm a little greasy right now because it's been 90 all day and 90% humidity. Um, and being spotless is not my priority right now. Getting these videos out is. So that was like, okay, wow, I'm on to something. Then there was a little lag for a year or two where it took me some time to experiment with that, with the vegetables. I started shopping, getting more and more whole foods. I was trying to get bread that was, first I started out with the bread that said it was healthy on the bag, and then I started learning about all the chemicals that were in the bread and how that bread was just as garbage as everything else. So I moved to like bread that was more single source, and then I found out about GMOs and that the single source bread wasn't really that great either. And uh, then I then I started looking at organic a little bit, with veggies, not with meats. I didn't think you could screw up meats. Animals just get raised. How are you going to screw up meats? But veggies, I knew they sprayed pesticides on, so I started going more organic. Um, and then I moved into my uncle's house. I got a job, got out of college, or dropped out of college because I knew that wasn't right. I mean, colleges are just brainwashing institutions these days. Any independent thought or idea I had in my head was stepped on instantly. Colleges are cults. So I dropped out, I left, I cut my losses, I cut my parents' losses. They shouldn't have funded my college. I shouldn't have gone to college. It was a good learning experience. I should have just audited the classes. I would have gotten everything I needed from there. Um, but I got out on my own. I had a job. I had my own money for the first time in my life. And the money plus getting away from my family, who was very, very asleep in terms of awareness of the dangers lurking in their food, air, water, soil, drugs, medicines, everything. So I got away from them. I started studying. And as I studied and I learned more, I realized that our system is very foul and there's something wrong. In my traipsing down the rabbit hole, I discovered raw milk, and people had been healing their candida, their fungal overgrowths with that. And so I got hooked up with the Weston A. Price Foundation in Minnesota, started buying raw milk, and I was getting improvements. That was awesome. As I was doing research on raw milk and the efficacy, the safety, the nuances about it, I came across Ajanos Vonderplanets and Carl Lauren and raw meat. At first, I'm not a judgmental person, I never have been, in terms of new ideas. So I didn't poo poo the idea when I read it, but I dismissed it out of hand. I didn't ridicule it. I didn't say, oh, that's retarded. I just thought, that's peculiar, and then dismissed it and kept moving. But over the next 2 weeks, the gears in my head started working, and long story short, I dove right in. It clicked. Raw meats, raw foods made sense. Oh yeah, we're the only ones who cook. We're the only ones who process. We're the only ones who, us and our domestics are the only ones who experience the epidemic of disease. There's a trend, a pattern. It's easy to follow, and there's nothing obtuse about it. So I dove in. I started eating raw meat. Instantaneous improvement. I started healing faster and feeling better than I ever did in my entire life. After that, I stuck to just hoofed animals for a while. Then I went to poultry. Then I started eating everything you could ever think of. And long story short, I healed everything that was ever wrong with me. I still have a little bit of stuffy nose from coffee, but that's about it. More to come.